Day 7, Mukenko, June 19th, 1979. 1. Kiboko. Monroe's intention in continuing through the night was twofold. First, he hoped to make up precious time, for all the computer projections assumed that they would stop each night. But it took no effort to ride the river in the moonlight. Most of the party could sleep, and they would advance themselves another 50 or 60 miles by dawn. But more important, he hoped to avoid the Ragora hippos, which could easily destroy their flimsy rubber boats. During the day, the hippos were found in pools beside the riverbanks, and the bulls would certainly attack any passing boat. At night, when the animals went ashore to forage, the expedition could slip down the river and avoid a confrontation entirely. It was a clever plan, but ran into trouble. For an unexpected reason, their progress on the Ragora was too rapid. It was only 9 o'clock at night when they reached their first hippo areas, too early for the animals to be eating. The hippos would attack the boats, but they would attack in the dark. The river twisted and turned in a series of curves. At each curve there was a still pool, which Kahiga pointed out as the kind of quiet water that hippos liked to inhabit. And he pointed to the grass on the banks, cut short as if the banks had been mown. Soon now, Krieger said. They heard a low grunting ha-hee, ha-ha-ha. It sounded like an old man trying to clear his throat of phlegm. Monroe tensed in the lead boat. They drifted around another curve, carried smoothly in the flow of current. The two boats were now about 10 yards apart. Monroe held his loaded shotgun ready. The sound came again, this time in a chorus. Ha-hee, ha-ha-ha. Kahiga plunged his paddle into the water. It struck bottom quickly. He pulled it out. Only 3 feet of it was wet. Not deep, he said, shaking his head. Is that bad? Ross said. Yes, I think it is bad. They came around to the next bend, and Elliot saw a half-dozen partially submerged black rocks near the shore, gleaming in the moonlight. Then one of the rocks crashed upward, and he saw an enormous creature lift entirely out of the shallow water, so that he could see the 4 stubby legs, and the hippo churned forward toward Monroe's boat. Monroe fired a low magnesium flare as the animal charged. In the harsh white light, Elliot saw a gigantic mouth, 4 huge, glistening, blunted teeth. The head lifted upward as the animal roared, and then the hippo was engulfed in a cloud of pale yellow gas. The gas drifted back and stung their eyes. He's using tear gas, Ross said. Monroe's boat had already moved on. With a roar of pain, the male hippo had plunged down into the water and disappeared from sight. In the second boat, they blinked back tears and watched for him as they approached the pool. Overhead, the magnesium flare sizzled and descended, lengthening sharp shadows glaring off the water. Perhaps he's given up, Elliot said. They could not see the hippo anywhere. They drifted in silence. and suddenly the front of the boat bucked up and the hippo roared and Ross screamed. Kahiga toppled backward, discharging his gun into the air. The boat slapped down with a wrenching crash, and a spray of water over the sides, and Elliot scrambled to his feet to check. Amy and found himself staring into a huge pink cavernous mouth and a hot breath. The mouth came down with a lateral slash on the sides of the rubber boat, and the air began to hiss and sizzle in the water. The mouth opened again and the hippo grunted, but by then Kahiga had got to his feet and fired a stinging cloud of gas. The hippo backed off and splashed down, rocking the boat and propelling them onward down the river. The whole right side of the boat was collapsing swiftly as the air leaked out of the huge guts in the rubber. Ellie tried to pull them shut with his hands. The hissing continued unabated. They would sink within a minute. Behind them, the bold hippo charged, racing down the shallow river like a powerful boat, churning water in a wake from both sides of his body, buttering in anger. Hold on, Karigas shouted, and fired again. The hippo disappeared behind a cloud of gas, and the boat drifted around another curve. When the gas cleared, the animal was gone. The magnesium flare sputtered into the water, and they were plunged into darkness again. Elliot grabbed Amy as the boat sank, and they found themselves standing knee-deep in the muddy water. They managed to beach the Zodiac on the dark riverbank. In the lead boat, Monroe paddled over, surveyed the damage, and announced that they would inflate another boat and go on. He called for a rest, and they all lay in the moonlight on the river's edge, swatting mosquitoes away. Their reverie was interrupted by the screaming whine of ground-to-air rockets, blossoming explosions in the sky overhead. With each explosion, the riverbank glowed bright red, casting long shadows, then fading black once more. Muguru's men firing from the ground, Monroe said, reaching for his field glasses. What are they shooting at? Elliot said, staring up into the sky. Beats me, Monroe said. Amy touched Monroe's arm and signed, Bud, come. But they heard no sound of an aircraft, only the bursting of rockets in the sky. Monroe said, You think she hears something? Her hearing is very acute. And then they heard the drone of a distant aircraft, approaching from the south. As it came into view, they saw it twist, maneuvering among the brilliant yellow-red explosions that burst in the moonlight and glinted off the metal body of the aircraft. Those poor bastards are trying to make time, Monroe said, scanning the plane through field glasses. That's a C-130 transport with Japanese markings on the tail. Supply plane for the consortium base camp, if it makes it through. As they watched, the transport twisted left and right, running a zigzag course through the bursting fireballs of exploding missiles. Breaking a snake's back, Monroe said. The crews must be terrified. They didn't buy into this. Elliot felt a sudden sympathy for the crew. He imagined them staring out the windows as the fireballs exploded with brilliant light, illuminating the interior of the plane. Were they chattering in Japanese, wishing they had never come? A moment later, the aircraft droned onward to the north, out of sight, a final missile with a red-hot tail chasing after it. But it was gone over the jungle trees, and he listened to the distant explosion of the missile. Probably got through, Munro said, standing. We'd better move on. And he shouted in Swahili for Kahiga to put the men on the river once more. To Mukenko. Elliot shivered, zipped his parka tighter, and waited for the hailstorm to stop. They were huddled beneath a stand of evergreen trees above 8,000 feet on the alpine slopes of Mount Mukenko. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and the air temperature was 38 degrees. 5 hours before they had left the river behind, and begun their pre-dawn climb in 100-degree steaming jungle. Alongside him, Amy watched the golf ball-sized white pellets bounce on the grass and slap the branches of the tree over their heads. She had never seen hail before. She signed, "What name?" "Hail," he told her. "Peter make stop. I wish I could, Amy." She watched the hail for a moment, then signed, "Amy want go home." She had begun talking about going home the night before. Although the Thoralian had worn off, she remained depressed and withdrawn. Elliot had offered her some food to cheer her up. She signed that she wanted milk. When he told her they had none, which she knew perfectly well, she signed that she wanted a banana. Kahiga had produced a bunch of small, slightly sour jungle bananas. Amy had eaten them without objection on previous days, but she now threw them into the water contemptuously, signing she wanted real bananas. When Elliot told her that they had no real bananas, she signed, "Amy want go home." "We can't go home now, Amy." "Amy good gorilla. Peter take Amy home." She had only known him as the person in charge, the final arbiter of her daily life, in the experimental settings of Project Amy. He could think of no way to make clear to her that he was no longer in charge, and that he was not punishing her by keeping her here. In fact, they were all discouraged. Each of the expedition members had looked forward to escaping the oppressive heat of the rainforest, but now that they were climbing Mukenko, their enthusiasm had quickly faded. "Christ," Ross said, "from hippos to hail." As if on cue, the hail stopped. "All right," Munro said, "let's get moving." Mukenko had never been climbed until 1933. In 1908, a German party under von Ranke ran into storms and had to descend. A Belgian team in 1913 reached 10,000 feet, but could not find a route to the summit. And another German team was forced to quit in 1919. When 2 team members fell and died about 12,000 feet, nevertheless, Mukenko was classified as a fairly easy, non-technical climb by most mountaineers, who generally devoted a day to the ascent. After 1943, a new route up the southeast was found, which was frustratingly slow but not dangerous, and it was this route that most climbers followed. Above 9,000 feet, the pine forest disappeared, and they crossed bleak grassy fields cloaked in chilly mist. The air was thinner, and they called frequently for a rest. Monroe had no patience with the complaints of his charges. "What do you expect?" he demanded. "It's a mountain. Mountains are high." He was especially merciless with Ross, who seemed the most easily fatigued. "What about your timetable?" he would ask her. "We're not even to the difficult part. It's not even interesting until 11,000 feet. You quit now and we'll never make it to the summit before nightfall. And that means we lose a full day." "I don't care," Ross said finally, dropping to the ground, gasping for breath. "Just like a woman," Monroe said scornfully, and smiled when Ross glared at him. Monroe humiliated them, chided them, encouraged them, and somehow kept them moving. Above 10,000 feet, the grass disappeared, and there was only mossy ground cover. They came upon the solitary, peculiar, fat-leafed lobelia trees, emerging suddenly from the cold gray mist. There was no real cover between 10,000 feet and the summit, which was why Monroe pushed them. He did not want to get caught in a storm on the barren upper slopes. The sun broke out at 11,000 feet, and they stopped to position the second of the directional lasers for the Earth's laser fix system. Ross had already set the first laser several miles to the south that morning, and it had taken 30 minutes. The second laser was more critical, since it had to be matched to the first. Despite the electronic jamming, the transmitting equipment had to be connected with Houston, in order that the little laser, it was the size of a pencil eraser, mounted on a tiny steel tripod, could be accurately aimed. The two lasers on the volcano were positioned so that their beams crossed many miles away. Above the jungle, and if Ross' calculations were correct, that intersection point was directly over the city of Zinj. Elliot wondered if they were inadvertently assisting the consortium, but Ross said no. "Only at night," she said, "when they aren't moving. During the day, they won't be able to lock on our beacons. That's the beauty of the system." Soon they smelled sulphurous volcanic fumes drifting down from the summit. Now 1,500 feet above them, up here there was no vegetation at all. Only bare hard rocks and scattered patches of snow tinged yellow from the sulfur. The sky was clear dark blue, and so they had spectacular views of the South Virunga Range, the great cone of Nyiragongo rising steeply from the deep green of the Congo forests, and beyond that, Mukenko was shrouded in fog. The last 1,000 feet were the most difficult, particularly for Amy, who had to pick her way barefoot among the sharp, lava rocks. Above 12,000 feet, the ground was loose, volcanic scree. They reached the summit at 5 in the afternoon and gazed over the 8-mile wide lava lake and smoking crater of the volcano. Elliot was disappointed in the landscape of black rock and gray steam clouds. Wait until night, Monroe said. That night, the lava glowed in a network of harsh red through the broken dark crust. Hissing red, steam slowly lost its color as it rose into the sky. On the crater rim, their little tents reflected the red glow of the lava. To the rest, scattered clouds were silver in the moonlight, and beneath them the Congo jungle stretched away for miles. They could see the straight green laser beams intersecting over the black forest. With any luck, they would reach that intersection tomorrow. Ross connected her transmitting equipment to make the nightly report to Houston. After the regular 6 minutes delay, the signal linked directly through to Houston. Without interstitial encoding or other evasive techniques. Hell, Monroe said. But what does it mean? Elliot asked. It means, Monroe said gloomily, the consortium has stopped jamming us. Isn't that good? No, Ross said. It's bad. They must already be on the site. And they've found the diamonds. She shook her head and adjusted the video screen. Houston confirms. Consortium on-site Zinj. Probability 1,000. Take no further risks. Situation hopeless. I can't believe it, Ross said. It's all over. Elliot sighed. My feet hurt, he said. I'm tired, Monroe said. The hell with it, Ross said. Utterly exhausted, they all went to bed.